Hi there and welcome to another Unity 5 tutorial here on Holistic 3D. Remember, if you would like a tutorial requested or if you'd like to vote for the tutorials that are already in a list, you can go to the website at holistic3d.com/tutorials and you'll find in the right hand menu bar a list of the items that are coming up. So this is a tutorial on NavMesh, or the basics of a NavMesh, with some agents, and we're going to get the little agents to traverse through the NavMesh or across a terrain to a goal position. So to begin with, I have a mesh that I created in Maya. It's not very flash, but it's good enough to demonstrate the properties of the NavMesh. Now, you can also do this with a terrain object. Anything that's a single mesh is going to work for you here. And I've also got a little agent. So this guy's going to be our little character. Okay. Oh, there he is. So he's a little free lumberjack guy. He's got some animations. I got him from the asset store from here. So if you type in lumberjacks and go to the ones that are free, you'll find these three guys. And they've got the legacy and also the mech animations on them so that you can play around with them. So they're pretty good. Now, if you don't want to have a character, you can do this with a capsule or even a cube. It doesn't matter what your character is in this case for testing. Right, to begin with, we've got our mesh. We first of all need to make it a NavMesh. So in order to do that, let's just zoom out and select the mesh, is we need to run some code over the top of it. Now, we don't write any code. Unity does this for us, and it will determine which areas in here can be walked by the agent based on the slope and also the step heights that you can set. So we want to grab the navigation window, which is over here, and if you don't have yours already showing, you want to go Window, and where is it? Navigation. Down here, and that will bring up this navigation panel. Now, it's not actually connected to any particular terrain or mesh, and I'll show you that in a moment. So first of all, what we're going to do is select the terrain that we want to work with, which I've got called NMap, which is this one here. In order for this to work, this has to be set to blue at the time we run our bake operation, which is down here. And I'll get to that in a moment. So the basics of the NavMesh system is that you've got an agent, which is represented by this cylinder here. And you've got a step height that the agent can go up, and also slopes that the agent can go up. So if you want your agent to be able to go up really steep slopes, you would set it something like that. And if you don't want them to be able to go up high steps, then you can turn down the steps like that. So your agent, relative to your agent, that it'll be able to jump up a step like that. Now, a step is pretty much a 90-degree step up, whereas a slope is a continual angled thing. So if you have a look on this map here, this here is a slope, and this here is a slope, and then a step would be trying to jump up from here to here, for example. Right, now with these settings set, you select your mesh, and then you want to hit this bake button down here, and that will bake the navigatable areas into your map. Now, if we just go down and click on this Show NavMesh button here, this will show you the blue parts of where that agent is allowed to walk. Okay, so you can see that with the slope set quite high, so I've got it at 53 here, it's going to let you go up this slope here, and also the other slopes that are around the place. But if we set that slope so that the maximum slope you can go is quite low, like 10, and then I hit, make sure you select that again, hit bake. Then if we go back over here, you'll see that this slope is now out of the question. He can't go up that slope to get to where he needs to go to because it's just too steep. So let's just set that back to something quite high. I want him to go up there to start with and bake it again. Okay, now you can see that some other areas have been exposed where he now can walk through, which includes this one here. Now, the agent himself is not going to just automatically go wandering around this map. He's got to have some kind of a goal that he wants to get to. So in order for him to do that, we need to place a goal position. So I'm going to create a cube in here. Now I don't want it to be attached to the map, so I won't select the map. 3D object cube, and I'm going to put the cube over here as the destination. Now, at this point, he's still not aware that that cube exists. So we need to write some code that will allow him to traverse to that. But first, before we do that, he needs to become a nav agent. So select your character, and then we want to add the nav agent component. So we want NavMesh agent, and we add that to our character. And this NavMesh agent comes with collider information such as the radius, the height, the base offset of it. If I just zoom into this guy, you'll be able to see that that collider has built itself around him in here. And you can see that it's probably way too big for him. So you can adjust that height. And you can also, if you adjust the base offset, you can move it up and down as well. If you want to kind of align that with your agent's feet. He also then has steering behavior. So he has a speed that he can run at. He has an angular speed, and he also has an acceleration and a stopping distance. So you can basically set how fast he's going to go and how fast he will turn as well. If he turns quite slow, then he's going to take a further distance around objects than that. So if you wanted to keep in close and tight to corners, then you'd have quite a high angular speed. Right, so that's our NavMesh agent added to here. We still need to write a little bit of code to get him to go to his goal destination. Create yourself a C# file and call it walk2. And I'll show you what's inside there. It's quite a short little script. All right, so in walk2, it's got a public transform, which is your goal object that we will set in the inspector. And then in the start function, we grab hold of the NavMesh agent, component that's attached to your character. And then we set its destination in here. And that's all you've got to do to get him to start walking towards there. There's no update loop or anything. He'll just do it all automatically because of the NavMesh agent, that's attached to it. So if you save that code and then we go back to Unity, you're going to attach that code to your character, which might be a cube if you're just following along. So I'm just going to drag and drop that onto my character. Now you can see that the goal object is exposed, so it wants to know where the character is going to walk to. So that's our cube. So we grab hold of a cube and drag and drop it into this goal position. And now we're ready to try it out. So let's run this. And we can watch our little dude walk down there. Okay, he takes a shortcut because that slope there's obviously okay. And remember we set our slope quite high, so now he can walk straight up here and across to there. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Now what happens if we put our slope down? So let's go back to our navigation for our map and let's turn that slope down. Select our map and bake it. Okay, now from here, if we just rotate around, we can see that this slope is now out of the question. So he's not going to go there. All right, let's run now. And he's going to take a different path. He likes to take the shortcut down there because obviously that slope's okay for him. Now he's walking all the way around the outside of here because this ends with a like a ditch in there, so he can't go through there, and he walks up and he gets to the goal location. Right, so one more thing we'll do is we'll make him a little bit more superhuman, and we're going to increase the step height that he can go up. So let's increase this up, say, quite large. Select the map again and go bake. Now, the step heights in that, if he can jump up them, you won't see them appear on your NavMesh in blue. But we can try them out. So let's see what happens now that he can actually jump much higher. So let's run this. And now he takes a shortcut there because he can go down that height. And he goes this way this time. Okay, because he knows that he can now jump up there to get there because he's got this superhuman ability. All right, so that's the basics of the NavMesh. Why can't I say that? So next, what you might want to do, if you're making like a strategy game or something and you want to spawn a whole heap of enemies, a tower defense, then you'll want to be creating them in one area and having them go to the goal location. Now, the issue you've got with spawning objects in one spot, especially if they're the nav guys, is that you can't set the code down here for this cube that exists in here on a prefabbed object, which means you need some code in order to find that goal destination as soon as the agents are spawned. So next we'll create a little spawner to keep creating these little lumberjack guys and get some code to set their goal destination. And then you can add these spawners all over the map if you wish to see the effect. So the first thing you need to do is create a spawn script. So in C#, create a script called spawn, and in that script we're going to put this here. So the usual libraries at the top, these are the default ones. Class is called spawn. Now we're going to have two public exposed variables at the top. First of all, we have nAgent, which is our nav agent. This will be a link to the prefab for our little guy. And then we also have a link to the goal object because we'll need to tell the agent every time they're created where their goal is, where they need to go to. Right, next in the start function, I'm going to invoke the spawn function after 2 seconds. And the spawn function is called spawn agent, which you can see is down here. So after 2 seconds, once this has started running, spawn agent will run. It's going to instantiate a copy of our agent and store it in a variable called NA. So then we get hold of that goal that is inside the walk to script and we set it to be the transform of the goal object that we've put here. So that the agent now knows where it's going to go to. And then finally, we invoke the spawn agent function again at some random time. So sometime between 2 and 5 seconds, the next agent will spawn. Now, if you're creating like a tower defense game and you know how many agents are going to spawn in a particular level, then I wouldn't do it this way where you're instantiating them constantly, because it's not a good idea to have a lot of instantiates going on inside the update of your loop. So you want to look at something like object pooling, or create an array at the top of your program and put in all of the agents that you want to spawn, and then just constantly loop through each index and keep throwing them into the game until you've sort of run out of them. And that's sort of the end of your, what are they called? Wave of characters as they come through. But for now, we're just using instantiate because it's quite easy to set up and you're just sort of investigating this anyway. Right, so that's the spawn script, and we'll save that and switch back into Unity. Now you need a place where the spawning is going to take place. So let's create a 3D object sphere, and that sphere will be my spawn location. So onto that sphere, I'm going to attach the spawn script. And then in the inspector for that sphere, you can see that it wants to know about the agent. This is our prefab we haven't created yet, and the goal object. So the goal object is that cube, so I can put that in there already. Now, to make an agent prefab out of our lumberjack, let's grab him and we'll just drag him straight into the project. That will make a prefab for us that we can then use. Right, so there he is. Let's go back to our sphere and we will grab the prefab from down in the project and we will put him up here into the spawn script. Okay, so now we can move this sphere wherever we would like them to spawn. So let's say we want to spawn some down in this bottom corner. And let me just show you one other thing. Go back to the spawn script. The spawn script is instantiating these agents, these prefabs, and when it does, it sets them to the position of the spawner. So transform.position is going to grab the position of the object that this code is attached to, which is that sphere. So that makes that spawner also the position, starting position of your agents. And Quaternion.identity is just your default rotation, which is basically 0, 0, 0. So your characters won't have any rotation added to them at all. Okay, so let's go back here and now we will run it. And he's still in the environment, but now this is starting to spawn. And you can see that these guys are going to go in that direction because that's a shorter path for them. And the step size is still quite large on here as well. So they're starting to sort of pile up down there. Okay, now that this sphere is actually a spawner, you can Control D to duplicate it and then move it over somewhere else. So let's put another one over there and run it. And now we have multiple spots where these guys are going to spawn. And you see they get to the goal and they just sort of mull around that area there. You could have a collider that destroys them when they reach their end point if you want. Notice they don't collide with each other as well, which is quite nice. So they're having a bit of a gathering up there in that top corner. Okay, now let's just go back to our map. To change the behaviour of these guys is just a matter of changing your navigation on your map. So remember we put a really large step on it. Let's turn that down. And select again the map. Make sure it's blue and hit bake to reset the navigation on that. The spawners are going to start spawning from these different points. And as they go around, they're not going to jump up that high step anymore. So they'll move to a point, you can see about here, that they'll decide they can step up there. If you want them to start right from this beginning of the slope, then you'll want to set that step quite small. Let's just do that quickly. Where's our step? So let's set our step right down to. I don't want to put it at nothing because I'm not sure how dodgy my map is I created. There might be a little bit of a step that's required. Yeah, let's go like that. So select it again and hit bake. And then let's run. And now they should more or less try and get to the very beginning of the slope before they go up over here. They won't jump, and they're not. Oh, they're taking that corner there. That's okay. Right, so that's the basics of NavMesh and creating spawners for your characters and setting their goal location. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you in the next tutorial.